This session, last but not least, so hopefully you're all still awake. This session is on innovation, as Thomas described, and it's on how can we future-proof what we're doing today and make it sustainable, and how can heat pumps play a vital role in the circular economy that we are creating here in Europe. We have heard so many things today that I just want to recap on. For example, mass rollout of heat pumps needed, speed, scale, new business models, disruption, agility, reducing total costs, heat pumps becoming the natural replacement for gas and oil boilers. I've also heard things like bust and boom, stranded assets. So how do we avoid that happening? Is there a risk of a mass rollout? And what do we do as an industry to protect our industry here in Europe? So we fully support, of course, the ambitions of Repower EU, mass rollout of heat pumps. Ambition requires action. That's why we're here today. And we all call for a heat pump accelerator. I'm going to pass over to the panelists very soon. So really, what I want to say is we're very lucky to have these panelists here today. So we have representatives from manufacturing, we have a representative from the construction and built environmental, and we also have a representative from Fraunhofer from research and academia. First, I'd like to introduce Enrique. Enrique Villamitana is Managing Director of Panasonic AC and Heating Europe, with over 30 years experience. Is that okay, Enrique? Yes?
Yeah.
In the industry.
I do my best.
So welcome. Next to Enrique, we have Ryan Roberts. Ryan is the head of sustainable construction for the Holcim Group. Holcim is a Swiss-based global building materials and aggregates flagship division of the Holcim Group. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you.
Finally, we have Peter Schosig. Peter is Director of the Business Division, Thermal Systems and Building Technologies in the Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems. And Peter has vast experience working on areas like energy efficient buildings, heating and cooling technologies, high temperature solar thermal and industrial processes. So welcome to the panel. Thank you. So firstly, to answer the question on innovation, Enrique, how do we future-proof what we're doing today in terms of heat pumps? And how do we make sure that what we're doing is adding to a really sustainable circular economy in the EU?
Yeah, thank you, Rowena. So, and thank you all. First, before talking about future-proof or circularity, I think for us, we need to take something for granted, that the products we will put in the market will be reliable, that will be highly efficient. So those products will be really a products that we can trust. So that is the first thing we need to do. But then, in my opinion, when we look about future-proof and we talk about circularity, in fact, we are talking very similar things. So we talk how much those products will last and will work efficiently in the market. So then, I think important is what we do before the products go to market. So, and that has been explained. So how we have good installers who can put those products correctly. So also how we, after those products are in the market correctly and well sized, etc. So how we also have a good service network, how we secure that the spare parts are available, how we secure the product is correctly put in market and then correctly managed in the market. But that is one of the critical parts to future-proof and to make this circularity so long-standing feasible. But then for me, the really important part is the products, the heat pumps we will put in the market should be digital, they should be smart. So those are, this is probably the most important part because we need to, and that might come later, so the product should be integrated in the building. So the product cannot be, and also was mentioned this morning, it can be part of the building, including maybe solar panel or controls or batteries, but all should come as a set. So this is really important. The second point, we are putting a product in the market today, but we want to be able to manage it tomorrow. So the product, if not digital, how we will upgrade those products. So that is a second point, that making digital is critical. And then the third point is how to provide services. So we also I talk about integrating in the building, but how to integrate in the city, for instance. So the product, if we want to connect to well efficiently managed grid, so probably the system needs to be first integrated in building, and then it needs to be integrated in the grid, for instance. So then for us, first, we need to do a good job before, we need to do a good job after, and most important, it should be digital and smart.
Thank you, Enrique. Brian, over to you. In terms of heat pumps and their role in buildings, what's your experience?
Yeah, I think they're a very effective lever to reducing the emissions and the whole life carbon of projects. I think there's probably 4 or 5 key levers that can have a real big impact, and particularly on the operational emissions side, heat pumps and insulation, they're probably the 2 key levers. So in my experience, they're a very powerful way to reduce emissions and the impact of a building. But I echo the sentiments that it's really about collaborating from the very early stage. So in the planning and design stage, understanding, what are the needs, what are the HVAC needs of the building, what are the services that it will need now and its future capacity, and then designing that from the start so that all the stakeholders in the design process and the value chain are aligned and engaged early. If that happens, I see that there's generally very good outcomes in terms of the emissions of buildings and the comfort for its residents as well.
Excellent. Peter, can you back that up, or have you got anything else to add that will enlighten us today in terms of some of the work that you're working on or have worked on?
Well, maybe one point I want to add, the heat pumps we are all developing right now and designing, that will be the majority of heat pumps being in the field from 2030 on, and hopefully many years from that on. And basically all scenarios say that at that time electricity will be so green that the embodied energy in the heat pump will be in the same order of magnitude of all the electricity we use over the lifetime of the operation of the heat pump. So this should be, to my opinion, the design criteria for the heat pumps we design right now. So we must now enter the phase of circularity. Mm-hmm. So we will look at the lifetime, because increasing the lifetime will help the footprint, but also recycling processes. Yeah. So just adding more copper to increase the efficiency is not the way it will work tomorrow. So we must now design the heat pumps in a way that there will be really a life cycle footprint with this minimized. And this will change for the future heat pumps.
Just coming back to that circularity question then, Enrique, from your point of view, what sort of work are you doing in terms of end of life of heat pumps?
Well, first, Rowena, we need to make the life long.
Exactly.
So that because I think also it was explained this morning. So the investment in a heat pump is huge. Mm-hmm. So then, definitely we need to. Our product should be as much recyclable as we can. But our priority now is to, as I said, make the life long, in a sense that we need to build a very strong service network who is maintaining the products correctly, to have a high degree of spare parts who can supply to the customers. I come back to the digital. If we can upgrade, if we can manage the product in a way the life is longer, that will be better. And for instance, for us, very important is those remote servicing. So we believe by taking all those actions, more than thinking what is happening to the end of the life, we are really much concentrating on how to make the life very long.
Yes, okay, that's obviously a starting point. But just to come back then, end of life. Heat pump is 15 years old. It's starting to show signs that something needs to happen to it. What should happen? What should happen to those components? Are there any other things that we can do with a heat pump, second life, third life?
No, I think in fact a lot of the recycling processes are considering. So in fact, I would say, of course, aluminium, copper, plastics, all those processes go into the recycling. So in fact, I think all manufacturers need to be in those recycling processes, and I think we will save most of it. I think it's inevitable. Some parts might not be recyclable, but I think the mission as manufacturers is to reduce those parts as much as we can.
Yeah. obviously legislation is going to push us down that route anyway. Peter, embodied carbon. We hear more and more and more about embodied carbon. What does that mean in the heat pump world?
Well, of course, all the materials you need to build your heat pumps have to be produced. So they need a specific amount of materials and energy to be produced, and this adds up to a lot. And as said, since the running time is getting better and better by green electricity, so this is really a thing you have to look at. So you must look at minimize this amount of materials and use clever materials and maybe new materials. And new production processes. I really like the session before about ramping up production. We need much more industrialized production processes to bring the energy demand down for this. But basically, we see this for PV modules. In the past, the option for research from PV was to reduce the price. But in 20 years from now, we will have a mountain of PV modules coming back on the size of the Matterhorn. So we really must think of processing that at that time. So therefore, we try to get out of lead inside the modules. So also same is true for the heat pumps. We really must look what are the materials inside, what we really need, what we can avoid, and what could be recycled. And we must start this process now. But it's ongoing, obviously, I think.
Ryan, can you give us any examples or case studies that you're currently working on in terms of how heat pumps can be integrated into full building?
Yeah, sure. I think there's probably a few, but being the end of the day, I'll just touch on the one that comes to mind. You know, a real triple bottom line story for me. So it was done in Vienna. It's a social housing project. And essentially what they've done is they're taking renewable energy, mix of solar and geothermal, using heat pumps to get that heat and energy into the building, and then they're storing it in the structure and the facade of the building. So it's called thermal concrete activation. It's probably not new to many people in the room, but essentially they're using the thermal mass and inertia of concrete to store that energy. And the outcome really is that the occupants, which are a social housing demographic, end up having a 22-degree year-round comfort level, and they don't have to pay for it. So it's not putting them in any economic stress, putting them in energy poverty or anything like this. This is one that comes to mind that I think that we were involved in, that I thought was, you know, a triple bottom line story using all the good elements and levers available.
Excellent. And coming back to some of the sessions from earlier, the session I think that most struck a chord with me was around the consumer and the installer and making things easy for them. How does innovation for you and future-proofing heat pumps, can you give us some thoughts on what needs to happen in terms of that engagement and education piece, and how that then feeds into a more sustainable rollout of heat pumps and a circular economy?
Yeah, I think that is the very, very popular discussion these days, how to train installers, how to bring installers, how to make products easy to install. So that is, in fact, very important. And I think this is going to really evolve very quickly, because in fact, I think it's going to be a must to manufacture, because we are not, in the past, the number of heat pump installed was limited. So now, if we make it easy to install, so probably the customer will reward this. So then I think the competition will bring this more and more. So I think, at least when I look at our engineers, in the past they look only about how efficient the product is, or how many meters of cable we can put, or etc. But now I see them looking at the unit and thinking together with installers how we can make it easy. So I think it's a natural process that is coming. And then I think we need to train. So this is really important part of our activity. So we need to train the installers. This is our responsibility, because I come again to this circular economy, long-lasting products in the market. So we cannot expect to make difficult products to install, not train the installers, and then expecting the product will last long. So this is really part of our duty as manufacturers.
And who else do you think has a duty around that, apart from manufacturers? We've heard from disruptors today and new business models. What's your take on that?
I think it's very normal process. We are, so whenever a business is expanding, I think new disruptive processes will come, and I find it normal, and I think in fact it should be a motivational part of the business for all of us. So, and in fact, I think it's needed, because today my personal viewpoint is we are touching just surface of market. But I think it was mentioned how the people, so when we look to, instead of CapEx, when we look to OpEx, if there is not new business models, it will be impossible. And I think when we talk about heat pump, we don't talk about people who can pay 10 or 15 or 20,000 euros. What we want is to expand to all society. And then I think it's, in my viewpoint, motivating and even needed.
Ryan, any thoughts on that in terms of disruption, new business models?
Yeah,
education?
I mean, my thought would be, I truly think the most disruptive business model that's out there and that I'm hoping moves quicker is the circular economy. I think I spoke to a number of people in the room over the last couple of days, and I asked them, hey, do you refurbish heat pumps? And no one said yes. They said no. They're designed to last forever. I said, well, how long's forever? And they said, oh, like 50 years. And this isn't forever. This is, the lifetime of a building. And so I think the disruptive model potentially is that rather than designing for end of life, it's more about designing for its next life before the end of life, and then training up and building an economy where when you go and put in a new system that can be recovered in its next life cycle, you're taking one that already exists and you're bringing it back. You're recycling the components that definitely need to be recycled, so it's still circular, but you're refurbishing that unit, putting it back into the market quicker. And I think this is the disruptive element where you start to build a business model that's probably similar to the car industry. You have new cars, you've got semi-used cars, and then you've got the cars that you probably don't want, but you have to buy. So I think this could be very disruptive. It's all about the circular economy, and the impacts are very relevant with what Peter said in the embodied carbon, because the embodied carbon of those products has already been made. So if you use it twice, you're halving the embodied carbon already. Use it 3 times, this amortizes over your reuse. So yeah, this would be my my tip of something that could really disrupt things and make things more sustainable at the same time.
Peter, want to add anything?
Well, I think the biggest disruption we have seen this spring, it was an external event which totally shook up the market. And so I'm not sure if just new business model will be a disruption. I personally fully with Enrique that using digital tools will be disruption for all of us. It's not only the business models. And by the way, I think we discussed before that this is also a way to increase the life cycle analysis, because you have 2 numbers to change, the embodied carbon, but also the output. And you can greatly enlarge the output by making the heat pump more clever, and especially by designing it better, because over-dimensioning is one of the biggest drawbacks for the LCA. So by doing a proper designing, by a good tools will dramatically increase your overall performance. So that's where I see the disruption coming from.
So to come back to the whole idea of digitalization, Enrique, can you expand a little bit what you mean by that in terms of the heat pump? Are you talking about digitalization of the heat pump itself, connection to the grid? What about home energy management? Who do you think are the winners in that market in 5-10 years' time? Will you be controlling your own heat pumps?
But I think we need to look in several ways. So I think, and I refer to some of the conversations today. So I think somebody said maybe we have not enough electricity. So then if we could ideally put in the market all heat pumps smart and manageable, so maybe we can do it in better way. So I think society might be one of the receivers of this benefit. Then I think then the consumer is always in the center of this discussion, because if you have a smart product, of course we can stay in the fancy part of I can put my temperature, but I think that is the minor thing. So the major thing is, for instance, if I can have my service. So if the service guy is not coming to my home, or it's coming instead of 4 times, it's coming 1 time. So then again, that is good for me. So I can have a better control unit. so I can benefit out of that. And then that connects to longer life. So again,
Yes.
so the main benefit is one side to the consumer, I have a better control, better service, longer life product, and then if we make it smart enough, that is also coming to the total society, because if we can manage our grid, so finally, one of the issues of is how to build infrastructure that can feed the heat pumps all time working full speed. So if we can really manage this, it's definitely coming a benefit for all of us.
Ryan, in terms of digitalization, what are Wholesome doing in that area?
Well, what I can say is it's integrated into everything we're doing, whether that's internal initiatives and internal parts of the business, but also externally, so the products that we're bringing to the market. And I guess when I spoke earlier about engagement across the different value chain stakeholders, this is an area that we work in digitization quite effectively, particularly in the digital design space at the early start of a project. So the BIM, digital twin, these type of approaches. And this is where I think heat pumps particularly and the operational emissions and energy performance of buildings has its most potential, because at an early stage, when nothing's been made, when nothing's been committed to, nothing's been cut, in a purely digital space, the modeling for the HVAC systems, for the performance of the building, all of this can be done quite easily with a tap of a keystroke rather than commitments. And so working with the value chain, engineers, architects, designers, but also the specific discipline engineers like HVAC, fire, these types. This is where we focus externally from the company with digitization.
Excellent. Okay. And Peter, are you working on anything at the minute that you would like to share with us? Any projects?
A lot of it has been said, but making smart heat pumps for me doesn't necessarily mean that the device should be smart. That's mandatory as well. It's the process, as you mentioned. Yes. I like the discussion in the afternoon from Lund. I think there are many data sources coming online nowadays, and we should use them. So the installer should know 80% of the building before he just arrives there. So we maybe just need some more data points like visual contact of the heating devices, and then he should come with the digital model and a proper designed heat pump. So it's the process which should make intelligence.
No, in fact, I think that there is we go to data protection, of course, but if we can understand how the heat pump is used, I think definitely you could even have two sides. One, as I said, you can give better product to the consumer, but I think it's even better. We can develop better heat pumps. So today we are having one product for all somehow. So if we understand well how the product is used, we could really improve the efficiency for the future, which product we are delivering.
Yes, of course. Excellent. Coming back to the circular economy, then, what do you see? What do you see as the biggest threat to circularity and heat pumps, given probably the current crisis that we have and the external environment? What would your call-outs be that we should be paying attention to over the next 12 to 24 months? What should we be working on?
Me, as a challenge, is, and again, we are not adding anything new, but I think it's about regulations, in fact. So how we can find a reasonable amount of regulations, which, by the way, is not different in Spain, Italy, Ireland, UK. So to me, that is definitely one of the challenges. So
and can you expand on that? Do you mean we have too many regulations coming our way? Too few?
Yeah, I think
too confusing?
Sometimes too much demanding. So sometimes, anyway, as I said, each country deploying a little more. But yes, we have, for instance, I could say a new, when we talk about EPBD, or when we talk about, so those regulations which, for instance, we need to put all data. So now we need to show the CO2 footprint of our products. But how to make those regulations a benefit more than a burden.
Yeah.
So that is what I mean. So we need to really balance the request that is benefiting and why not is making the manufacturer works better, but not creating a real burden that, and we talk again about affordability, so that is making the product more expensive. That I think is the challenge we see. And then coming to this morning, Patrick was mentioning about mass productions, if we want to improve cost. So if the regulation change continuously, if the regulation cannot be applied across all the countries, that is making for the manufacturers a real challenge to improve efficiencies.
Do you want to come in? Just expand on that, Enrique. Do you think this is where one of the areas where a heat pump accelerator could support and help?
Yeah, I think, but then, I think if there are many challenges in front of us. So I think we have the F-gas challenge, and we have the EPBD challenge, and eco design challenge. Yeah, I think if we could reduce this load, I think it could support on accelerating. Again, we need to accelerate, and we need to produce a lot of heat pumps, and we need to make them affordable and easy to install, and many of these things. But I think all of us know quite well everything coming, so that
at the one time.
So then that I don't need to explain that it's creating some hurdles to make this speed faster.
And I think it could help by setting clear standards and boundary conditions.
Yeah.
For example, if just looking at the efficiency for the running time of the CUP is maybe not enough if we come to really sustainable products. So we must agree on common grounds how this is defined. And by the way, I would love to enlarge this by not only looking at the CO2 footprint, we should really speak about sustainability, which contains more criteria, just to be precise. And I think there's room for discussion, but there's a need for a common ground and the building of standards. And there, a heat pump accelerator could help that we all work the same direction.
Ryan, from your point of view, threats and challenges to a mass heat pump rollout in your sector? And how can we overcome them together?
One challenge that I see is the scale that needs to be undertaken. And so particularly in Europe, the majority of the built footprint, it already exists. So what's going to be there in 2050, 2060, it's already built. So the European story is really a retrofit, renovate, upgrade story. And that's really going to be about energy efficiency. So it's a great opportunity for heat pumps and energy efficient solutions in general, because we're going to make people's lives better. But the scale of it, the challenge of implementing that, if you just think about everything that's built and that you then want to go, and it probably sounds amazing as an opportunity of putting a heat pump in every building. And I truly hope that we can move to that. But there's a huge challenge in that around the resources of the people to be able to do that, the materials available. There's a number of things that will make that difficult to deliver. But on the other side, it's really a must, because it's built, it's from a carbon perspective and a sustainability perspective, it's not feasible to knock down and rebuild. The most sustainable and circular way to build is to renovate, retrofit. So there's only the only choice is to retrofit Europe and make it more energy efficient. So I think it's a challenge that has to be overcome, and I hope the people in this room have the solutions. I hope.
In fact, Ryan, I think this is very, very interesting, because I agree with you. Most of the business to be done is retrofitting. And many buildings, so a lot of buildings are made in old way. So with all regulations, with all systems. So then if we take all regulations coming up, and we have to start retrofitting, so I think there is a big challenge. I'm not so sure in a good direction, which of course we are doing many things in good direction. I'm not so sure how big part of this retrofitting market will be realized. So the cost of retrofitting might be huge. So, and that I'm not sure how it is considered in all those new regulations coming up. Yeah. That's a question, in fact, for you. So,
well, I think you need to zoom out and look at the whole building. I think this is the challenge. If you just look at the cost of the heat pump or the cost of any particular type of system or lever, it's always challenging to make the ROI stack up. But if you zoom out and look at the whole building and your options, we either knock it down and we go for a demo and rebuild, or we there's not going to be that many greenfield opportunities to build. So it's a knockdown rebuild versus a retrofit. So when you look at it from that perspective, the total cost of the project, the retrofit should always be more economical than the knockdown and rebuild. Whether the heat pump or another sort of type of component are a little bit more expensive or the ROIs don't work out, I think it's good to zoom out and understand what you're actually trying to achieve, and that's retrofit the built environment so it's a net zero future. And compare the two options, knockdown versus retrofit, and then I think you've got your answer.
okay.
Hopefully I answered what you were
alluding to. I have some doubts of the cost. Traditionally, retrofitting might be more economical than making it new. But I think when they have this, in fact, that we have a paradigm, because it might happen that retrofitting might be much more expensive than making it new. So that is what I mean. So then we might be facing a complete different situation we have been facing up to now.
I agree, but I mean the only way to do it is do the cost analysis. But I think retrofitting can certainly be more expensive than building new. That's it's difficult to retrofit, but there should be a differentiation between building new and demolishing and rebuilding. There's a lot of work in taking down the skyline behind us and building it. So I think new build from scratch is a different cost and a different discussion than knock down rebuild.
But we had it this morning. It depends on how you define the cost. It's maybe about the internalization of these external costs. If you put all the CO2 costs on the concrete, new build buildings might look different than retrofitting. So it really depends, we had discussed this morning, how buildings will be considered into the CO2 market. So I still think there's a big chance for making retrofit cheaper if you really look at the overall energy used and the footprint. It depends who pays this price. That's a political decision.
So, final thoughts for today. We are the last session of the day. We've been here all day. We've listened to all the different panels and sessions. Enrique, as a large manufacturer of heat pumps globally and in Europe, what are your 3 takeaways from today? And if you had one ask, what would it be? Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No problem. No problem. But first, I would say we are in front of a great opportunity. So that would be that is clear for all of us. The opportunity is not an easy process. So we need to overcome a lot of hurdles, let's say. And then I come to the future. So I think the future depends very much on us. So, and we are going to be a critical part of the energy efficiencies of decarbonization in the next years or in the next decade. So we have to be practical. We have to be practical, and we need to try as much as possible as a market to bring pragmatic solutions that will allow us to reach that goal. So I think these type of opportunities, we have seen them already in the market, and not always they have reached the final goal. So we should be smart and bring bring this future to a reality.
Thank you. And Ryan, is this your first time at an EHPA event?
It certainly is.
Will it be your last?
Well, I think that's up to the group.
No, the answer is no.
But from my perspective, oh, if it's no, it's no. From my perspective, I've had a great time. I've been really inspired by the passion of the group. For what it's worth, I think you're on the right. It's a difficult journey to have, but you're on the right side of history. That you have the right solution to get us where we need to be in terms of net zero, both 2050 and 2030. A lot of passion. If you'll have me back, I'd love to come.
Very welcome. And Peter, finally, you have a lot of experience in this area. You've seen a lot. You've worked with a lot of different groups, industry, etc.
Well, I would say we face a really, really huge task to provide the residents of this earth, a growing number of residents, with the services they need, heat, cold, food, and so on, with the minimum social and economic footprint. And I think heat pumps are a great, great tool to serve this. And I love that they are finally getting more and more attendance on the way there. And I like the introduction this morning. I think it was from Glenn Dinklage who said, we are not competitors. We are all bond together to fulfill this large task. And I think that we should try to make the next years, and there the accelerator could help, that we all work together towards this task. Not only seeing business models and business opportunities, but seeing us as part of this task to be fulfilled.
It's a collaboration. One voice as possible. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the audience? Not
No.
yet.
It's number 7. Yeah, I just wanted to add that the whole circularity issue, it's really being discussed at the moment in the Parliament and the Council. And during the revision of the EPPD, they are looking at whole life embodied carbon, both in construction materials and in technical building systems. Yeah. And also we have the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation that is also being discussed. So this is really, I would say, a hot topic. We are looking at it also at EHPA, following this very closely. So I think, next years we will have again, this topic to be discussed, and even more with concrete legislation being put on the table. So it's just an addition.
Exactly.
Yeah, we are on the way.
Anybody else? Thomas?
I have a few words, but I'll let you finish first.
No, for me, that's it. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. As all the panelists have said, I've been here for 2 days. I've interacted with a lot of people. I was at dinner last night, been here today. The passion and the drive in the room is insurmountable. It's really up to us now to make it happen and to collaborate. So yes, let's push for our heat pump accelerator. And thank you. Sorry that we are last, but hopefully it was a good discussion. Thank you.